are the pre-sale condo buyers that have bought in 2022 and 2023. I have made a separate video talking about this subject.
Brampton's real estate market has fallen harder than anyone expected. Prices down over 7% year-to-date, condos losing more than 10%, and homes sitting on the market for nearly 2 months with no offers. The city that once symbolized Ontario's booming growth is now drowning in for sale. Signs and broken promises. Behind closed doors, the premier is said to be in shock, staring at the numbers that shattered his confidence and his narrative of stability. If Brampton, Ontario's fastest-growing city, can freefall this fast, what happens to the rest of the province next? The numbers. No one wanted to see it.
Is 943,000, down 1.5% from last month and 7.5% from the year-over-year numbers. Transaction volume is down almost 31% right now.
Started quietly, the kind of shift most people thought was temporary. But by the time the summer ended, the numbers coming out of Brampton's real estate market were brutal enough to make even the most confident homeowners nervous. Prices didn't just slip, they fell off a cliff. Year-to-date, values are down more than 7%, and detached homes that once flirted with the million-dollar mark are barely holding on. The average detached house that sold for $1.02 million last year is struggling to attract offers at $950,000 today. The city that once symbolized Ontario's unstoppable housing boom has become a warning sign flashing red. Condo owners are feeling the pain even more. Those shiny one-bedroom apartments that sold for $545,000 at the height of the frenzy? They're lucky to fetch $480,000 now, if they sell at all. For a lot of first-time buyers, that's not just disappointing, it's devastating. They put everything on the line, thinking they were getting their piece of the Canadian dream, and now they're staring at negative equity. The walls of optimism that defined the Brampton market have cracked wide open. Many of these owners can't sell without taking a loss, so they're trapped, paying inflated mortgages on homes worth less than what they owe. Semi-detached homes, once seen as the sweet spot between affordability and space, have taken their own beating. Prices have fallen roughly $57,000 in just 1 year, and the transaction volume has plunged by more than 20%. You can feel the anxiety building across neighborhoods where for sale signs stay up far too long, flapping in the wind as families wait for offers that never come. The story is the same for freehold townhouses, which have lost an average of $60,000 in value. What was once the safe buy for families priced out of Toronto has turned into a slow bleed of confidence and cash. And it's not just about price, it's about time. Homes that used to fly off the market in a week or two are now sitting for over 45 days on average. Agents say they're fielding fewer calls, fewer showings, and even fewer serious offers. Some listings have been reposted 3-4 times, each one with a slightly lower asking price. The energy that once defined Brampton's market, the rush, the competition, the chaos, has disappeared. In its place is hesitation and fear. Buyers know they hold the power now, and they're using it. Lowball offers, drawn-out negotiations, and deals falling apart at the last minute have become the new normal. What's even more shocking is the scale of the inventory. More than 2,300 homes are currently sitting on the market, an amount the city hasn't seen in years. For sellers, that means more competition, more waiting, and more pressure to cut prices just to stay in the game. For buyers, it's a buffet of options, something unheard of in Brampton since the boom began a decade ago. The city has officially entered a full-blown buyer's market for the first time since 2014, with 6.4 months of inventory. That number might sound harmless, but for anyone who remembers the bidding wars and overnight sales of 2021, it's proof that the tide has completely turned. Behind the statistics are real stories of families who bought at the peak, investors who can't find renters, and homeowners quietly regretting that they waited too long to sell. The Premier's office is watching closely, but even at Queen's Park, there's disbelief. No one thought Brampton, The city that defined the GTA's real estate dream would be the first to stumble this hard. Yet here it is, sitting on thousands of unsold homes and a market gasping for air. The numbers don't lie, and neither does the silence on those once busy streets. The human fallout behind the stats.
Cambridge, London, the Durham region, some have moved out of province, even out to Alberta. Why? Because they look at what $900 can actually buy you in Brampton versus some of the other areas that are out there.
Behind every headline and percentage point in Brampton's market collapse is a real story, one that's raw, emotional, and painfully familiar. These aren't just numbers. They're families who thought they were safe. Couples who stretched every dollar to buy during the frenzy of 2021, convinced prices would only rise. They were told to get in while you can, and they did, at record highs. Fast forward to 2025, and many of those same homeowners are opening renewal letters that feel more like eviction notices. Payments that were once manageable have doubled overnight, and selling isn't an escape anymore. The offers just aren't there. It's the same story up and down the city's streets. A young couple in Mount Pleasant who bought a modest detached home for $1.1 million are watching identical homes on their block list for $950,000 and still sit unsold. Their mortgage renewal this fall added nearly $1,200 to their monthly payments. They considered renting out the basement to survive, but tenants aren't biting either. It's a quiet panic, the kind that builds behind closed doors when families realize they're trapped in a home they can't afford to keep or sell. Every for sale sign that lingers becomes a mirror, reflecting someone else's regret. Then there are the first-time condo buyers. For many of them, Brampton was supposed to be their affordable entry into the GTA dream. But the dream has curdled fast. One-bedroom units that once felt like gold are now dead weight. Owners are discovering that the $545,000 investment they proudly made 2 years ago is worth closer to $480,000. And that's before fees, taxes, or agent commissions. Selling means taking a loss. Holding means paying too much for too little. Some are quietly turning their condos into rentals, hoping to ride out the storm, while others are walking away entirely.
So below the actual list price. We're seeing sellers finally adjust, but buyers, they're still pretty hesitant with all that choice. The market's starting to expose who's realistic.
Even real estate agents, once the loudest cheerleaders of the Brampton boom, are struggling to put on a brave face. Open houses that used to attract lines down the street now see maybe 2 or 3 visitors, most of them just browsing. Agents whisper among themselves about listings they can't move, clients who vanish mid-negotiation, and colleagues leaving the business altogether. The optimism that once fueled the industry has been replaced by survival instinct. It's like watching a market bleed in slow motion, one veteran agent said. And the worst part is, no one knows when it stops. The ripple effects stretch beyond housing. Contractors are losing work as renovation projects dry up. Small businesses that relied on the constant churn of buyers and sellers, staging companies, photographers, mortgage brokers, are all feeling the squeeze. Even city officials are uneasy, knowing falling property values could hit municipal revenues next year. Brampton, once the shining symbol of suburban growth, is starting to look like a warning. At Queen's Park, the Premier's aides are scrambling to downplay the panic, but behind the scenes, frustration is boiling. Brampton was never supposed to be the problem. It was the city used in speeches as proof Ontario's housing strategy was working. But when even the affordable markets crumble, that illusion falls apart fast. The Premier's shock has turned to worry. Because if Brampton, the city built on growth and confidence, can fall this hard, what does that mean for the rest of Ontario? The human fallout has only begun, and for thousands of families across the city, the pain is becoming impossible to hide. The Premier's breaking point. By the time the Brampton numbers landed on his desk, the Premier could barely keep his composure. The briefing was supposed to be routine, just another regional update, but the data was far worse than his staff had prepared him for. Prices in one of Ontario's proudest growth cities down by double digits, inventory flooding the market, and agents openly calling the market a ghost town. He stared at the report in disbelief, jaw tightening as advisors scrambled to explain how a city once held up as a success story had become a symbol of failure. "Brampton?" he muttered under his breath, his voice caught somewhere between anger and disbelief. "How the hell did we lose Brampton?" Behind closed doors, frustration turned into fury. The Premier had spent years promising housing affordability without collapsing prices, a political balancing act that was always fragile, but Brampton's sudden freefall made it clear that the balance was gone. During one particularly heated meeting, he slammed a stack of market reports onto the table, accusing his ministers of sleepwalking through a disaster. Leaked footage from a Queen's Park Press event captured his breaking point, his voice cracking as he snapped at reporters questioning his government's handling of the crisis. "You think this is just numbers?" he shouted. "These are families who did everything right." The clip spread fast, replayed across news stations and social media with captions like, "Premier loses it over housing collapse." But the truth behind that outburst wasn't just politics. It was panic. For years, Brampton had been the government's favorite talking point. It was proof that Ontario's middle-class dream still existed, that hardworking families could still buy a home, build wealth, and raise kids in a growing city. That dream has cracked wide open. Every falling price and every unsold listing feels like a personal betrayal to the Premier who built his legacy on stability. Inside Brampton, the backlash is growing louder. Homeowners are furious. Investors feel abandoned. City councillors are demanding emergency relief measures, accusing the province of ignoring the early warning signs. Behind the scenes, senior staffers are quietly admitting what no one wants to say publicly, that Ontario's entire housing structure might be more fragile than anyone realized. If Brampton's falling apart, one aide reportedly told a journalist, the rest of the GTA is next. Even longtime developers, once loyal allies, are voicing their doubts. Construction on new projects has slowed dramatically as builders pull back, afraid that completed homes will sit empty. Bankers are tightening lending standards, spooked by the surge in listings and rising defaults. The ripple effect is spreading fast, from Brampton's quiet suburban streets to the financial corridors of Toronto. The Premier's public image, once polished and confident, has started to crack under the pressure. His once steady tone in press conferences has turned defensive, almost desperate. Every question about housing feels like a jab. Every headline about the Brampton collapse hits harder. In private moments, aides say he's pacing the halls, replaying the numbers over and over, looking for someone to blame. The banks, the developers, the feds, anyone. But deep down, he knows the truth. This isn't just Brampton's problem. It's Ontario's reckoning. For years, the province built its identity around real estate wealth. But in Brampton, the illusion has shattered, and the Premier's breaking point may just be the beginning of a much bigger political storm. How Brampton lost its spark.
And 6.8 year over year. 77.5% of these detached homes, they're selling below the asking price. The days on market in Brampton right now jumped.
There was a time when Brampton was unstoppable. Realtors called it Ontario's golden suburb, a city where homes sold in days and families lined up outside open houses. People moved there from Toronto chasing bigger yards, better schools, and a shot at home ownership that didn't feel impossible. Developers couldn't build fast enough. New subdivisions were popping up on every corner, and investors treated Brampton like a guaranteed win. Everyone believed it. Prices would rise forever. But that belief, that blind confidence, is exactly what set up the crash. The first cracks appeared in early 2023 when interest rates started climbing faster than anyone could handle. Suddenly, the bidding wars that once defined Brampton disappeared overnight. Buyers pulled out, sellers panicked. Mortgage pre-approvals that looked rock solid at 2% made no sense at 6%. Families who bought at the peak watched their payments balloon, while the homes they thought would secure their future started losing value every month. The same market that had made thousands of people rich was now draining them dry. By 2025, the slowdown had turned into a full-blown collapse. Detached homes, once worth over $1 million, were now struggling to reach $950,000. Condo prices had cratered more than 10%, and sales across the board had fallen off a cliff. Agents whispered about listings that had been sitting for 60, even 90 days with no offers. The shine was gone, and so was the confidence. Brampton's real estate empire had officially lost its spark. What made this collapse sting even more was how fast it happened. In less than 3 years, Brampton went from being the envy of the GTA to the face of Ontario's housing crisis. Investors who once boasted about flipping properties are now selling at a loss or walking away entirely. First-time buyers who thought they beat the system are stuck paying record mortgages on homes worth less than they owe. And those who chose to wait out the downturn are realizing the bottom keeps sinking lower. The city's swagger has vanished, replaced with quiet dread and awkward conversations about refinancing and selling before it gets worse. Even developers, the same ones who once promised endless growth, are slamming the brakes. Construction sites are half empty. Projects are delayed or canceled altogether. It's not just fear, it's survival. Builders know what happens when demand evaporates. They're left holding millions in unsold homes and debt they can't cover. So, they've pulled back, waiting for some kind of miracle to stabilize the market. What's left behind is a city that feels eerily frozen, streets filled with for sale signs that never come down, agents chasing buyers who've vanished, homeowners refreshing listings every week hoping someone, anyone, makes an offer. Brampton's once bustling real estate scene has turned into a cautionary tale of overconfidence and overextension. The premier, who once called Brampton a model of Ontario's growth, can barely mention it in press conferences without his tone tightening. Because this city isn't just a local problem anymore, it's a warning. Brampton's collapse shows what happens when optimism outpaces reality, when governments build their economic dreams on property prices instead of balance. The city that once symbolized opportunity has become Ontario's biggest wake-up call. And if Brampton, with all its promise and population growth, can fall this far, how long before other cities follow? The domino effect.
Brampton's average home price is still sitting around $940,000. It's slightly up month over month, but down, of course, year over year, 7%. But here's where it actually gets a little bit real. The homes, they're taking a lot longer to sell, 24 days on average.
When Brampton stumbled, the rest of Ontario felt the tremor. For years, the city was seen as the province's real estate safety net, the affordable alternative to Toronto, the place where the middle class could still dream. But as Brampton's market collapsed, that illusion evaporated. What was once an isolated downturn is now spreading through Ontario's housing landscape like a slow, unstoppable chain reaction. From Oshawa to Milton, from Barrie to Windsor, prices are slipping, buyers are retreating, and confidence, the one thing markets rely on, has vanished. Banks are already tightening credit. Mortgage renewals that once felt routine have become nightmares. Families are walking into meetings expecting minor adjustments and walking out realizing they can't afford their homes anymore. It's the same story everywhere: rising rates, shrinking values, and fewer buyers willing to take the risk. Even cities that once seemed untouchable, like Mississauga and Vaughan, are seeing listings pile up. The Brampton collapse didn't just shake local confidence, it broke the illusion that Ontario's real estate was bulletproof. Developers are the next to feel the shock. Construction sites across the GTA are slowing down or sitting half-finished. Lenders are pulling back, afraid of funding projects that might never sell. Builders who once bragged about pre-sale waiting lists can't even fill half their units. The cranes that once crowded Ontario's skylines are starting to disappear. Every canceled project means hundreds of lost jobs: tradespeople, electricians, designers, suppliers. all tied to a market that suddenly feels fragile. The economic ripple is massive, and it's only beginning. Meanwhile, realtors who built their entire careers on an endless boom are watching their pipelines dry up. Deals that once closed in a week now stretch for months, and sellers are slashing prices just to stay afloat. Many agents are quietly leaving the business altogether, unable to survive on commissions that no longer come. Mortgage brokers, appraisers, and even staging companies are feeling the squeeze too. Ontario's entire housing ecosystem, once fueled by constant turnover, is stalling out. At Queen's Park, the tension is palpable. The Premier's advisors have shifted from spin to damage control. Every press conference about affordability progress is met with skepticism and anger. Homeowners want answers, investors want protection, and voters, many of whom are losing money for the first time in their lives, are furious. "You said Ontario was strong," one caller shouted during a live radio interview. "If this is strength, what does weakness look like?" The truth is, Brampton's fall wasn't an accident. It was a warning sign ignored. Years of easy credit, unchecked speculation, and political denial built a housing economy that was bound to crack. Brampton just happened to break first. But what happens next could decide Ontario's future. If the province can't stabilize the housing market, if renewals, foreclosures, and price drops continue to snowball, it won't just be homeowners in trouble. It'll be entire communities, businesses, and cities that depended on real estate wealth to keep them alive. So, what are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below.